Poll. Overwhelming majorities express concerns about Biden, Trump ahead of 2024 race. 7 minutes read. 3/4 of voters are concerned about Joe Biden's age and mental fitness, while nearly 2 in 3 worry about Donald Trump's multiple trials, per a new NBC News poll. Below are your comments. Exactly. And it has been proven in the past that many of these polls were wrong. Remember those that pretty. Thanks for sharing the opinion of the 1,000 Americans who participated in this poll. It totally makes a difference in how I think, process information and/or will vote. Doesn't matter, but I would appreciate a choice besides those two. I have not missed an election since I turned 18, many years ago. I am tired of having to vote for the less of two evils, rather than a candidate I like. I think most Americans would prefer a Democrat and Republican candidate younger than Biden and Trump. If these two are my choices, I care too much for our democracy to vote for DJT. Biden is not my first choice for 2024, but I fear that if Trump ever regains office he will never leave voluntarily and, in this context, just throwing. Next news. Pete Buttigieg. Biden is joining UAW picket line because he's deeply pro-worker. 2 minutes read. President Joe Biden will join the UAW picket line because he's deeply pro-worker. Not because he's trying to get ahead of former President Donald Trump, Buttigieg said. Below are your comments. Another example of the pro-inflation administration supporting a 40% pay increase and working 20% less hours. Doesn't take a rocket scientist to realize what this would do to auto prices. Being anti-fossil fuels and anti-ICE vehicles isn't pro-worker. It's pro-elite. Only the rich can afford EVs and to replace all of their natural gas-powered appliances with government-approved efficient electric appliances. We're still getting pounded with inflation, while it benefits him and the. How can Brandon be deeply pro-worker when he never worked a day in his life? These three companies already make mediocre vehicles that are overpriced and junk compared to other manufacturers. Increasing salaries while needing to stay competitive will either result in cheaper materials or her prices, making it more difficult to compete. Anyone who supports the UAW demands of 40% pay increase for 20% less working hours does not have TS country's best interest in mind. Next news. Hillary Clinton says she doesn't believe Donald Trump when he doubts he would pardon himself. 2 minutes. Read. Hillary Clinton doubted Donald Trump's comments that he is unlikely to pardon himself, saying she doesn't believe him on anything. Below are your comments. When Ken Starr interviewed Hillary in 1994, she claimed she didn't remember or I can't recall over 10 times. It's a wonder she remembers who Trump is. When Ken Starr interviewed her in 1994, she said she couldn't recall over 100 times. When the FBI interviewed her in 2016, she couldn't recall 39 times. But somehow, when someone not registered as a Dem talks about it, people living in glass houses shouldn't throw stones. Next news. Donald Trump's criminal charges spark concerns among 2024 voters, new poll shows. 2 minutes read. While Donald Trump's support hasn't wavered among GOP primary voters despite his criminal indictment, a general election could be a different story. Below are your comments. This says to me that we have about 1/3 of our population with AS. Trump is a con man with an overinflated ego. If elected, would he not be able to resist manipulating our government to A? Our laws need to be changed. If a felon cannot even vote, then why should a person be able to run for president if convicted of a felony? If Trump won the election, the ones that voted for him would be so sorry that they did vote for him. They saw what he did after his election. Everything would be about him and for him only. It is so obvious that the only thing he cares about is himself. Next news. Donald Trump's attacks on top military officer are outrageous, Pete Buttigieg says. 2 minutes read. Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg knocked Donald Trump's remarks on the retiring chairman of T. He Joint Chiefs of Staffs and other service members. Below are your comments. Trump's attacks on just about anybody you can mention are outrageous. He is so unfit for office, it is tragic, and why? Being anti-U.S. military may be popular with the conspiracy-addled Republican base, but it is not a winning strategy with the general electorate. Not all Republicans are anti-military, but they are all so silent, and as we have seen time and again, a silent Republican is a complicit Republican. This time, Transportation Secretary Pete Buttigieg is only partially correct. The mere presence of Donald Trump in this world is outrageous. Next news. Book excerpt. Enough by Cassidy Hutchinson. 5 minutes read. The former White House staffer who testified about the actions of former President Donald Trump during the insurrection writes of her experience as a witness before the January 6 committee. Below are your comments. An Amazon bestseller days before release. All 3 versions are the top 3 bestsellers in books about the executive branch of government. By 2024 she will be a millionaire. Rudy will be drinking fortified wine in an alley, totally broke and crying in the rain. Smart, strong woman. I hope her book does well. One cannot say that this woman didn't have her wits about her, both during that witless presidency and during the revelations afterwards. I watched Ms. Hutchinson's testimony on the January 6 hearings, and I admire her bravery and bleep in telling Congress what she had heard and knew. A lot of others didn't have the guts or foresight to get up there and tell how Trump and his band of criminals attempted to overthrow our government. Next news. Menendez indictment appears to undercut claims of two-tiered system of justice. 5 minutes read. Washington. On Wednesday, Republicans on the House Judiciary Committee repeatedly accused Attorney General Mary C.K. Garland of singling out former President Donald Trump for selective prosecution, slamming him for what they call a two-tiered system of justice. 48 hours later, the Justice Department indicted one of the most powerful Democrats in the Senate, Bob Menendez of New Jersey, the chair of the Foreign Relations Committee, on bribery charges, making public a trove of evidence. Below are your comments. The two tiers are not about Rs and Ds. It's about rich and poor. If you can afford good lawyers, the consequences for illegal behavior are likely to be far less, if any, than if you're stuck with a public defender. No one becomes a multi-millionaire with multiple residences on $174K per year without taking insider. The Republicans are right about one thing: Washington is a swamp. But then again, so are almost all of the state capitals. The reason is clear. Unlimited campaign donations have led to the open sales of political influence. The only way to permanently drain the swamp is to outlaw super PACs. What seems to escape attention is the raid that found the cash, gold, car, etc. was in June 2022. So for 15 months nothing leaked from the Justice Department about this at all, until the indictments were filed. It shouldn't matter who they are or what party they are in, if they break the law they have to pay the price. No one is above the law. Next news. Make no mistake, it's absolutely possible Trump wins the 2024 election. 4 minutes read. Don't let the felony charges, the GOP competition, the incumbent president and the humming economy fool you. Donald Trump could win this. Below are your comments. He lost the popular vote the first time but squeaked through the Electoral College. Last time he lost the popular vote by a much larger margin, and since then the GOP demographic has eroded further. Economic times are not good, and a lot of people are struggling. Increasing the money supply by 40% in 2 years and belated rate hikes by the Fed in the first place exacerbated the problem. I oppose supply-side economics, the dominant model for half a century, which has caused unprecedented decons. If Trump couldn't win in 2020 and barely won in 2016 before his recent issues with complying with laws, there is no way he has a better shot in 2024. Maybe just wait and see what happens in court next year before anyone even considers it a viable option for him to be the nominee. Both parties should dump Trump and Biden and have fresh candidates elected. That is the only way for the country to come out of the horrible position we've been in for a while. We need younger candidates who show ethical behavior, abide by the Constitution, and have good policies that represent the This is why he will not be on a debate platform. He knows nothing about governing this country, period. He just wants to give or. Next news. Judge hears arguments over scope of trial in New York's civil suit against Trump. 3 minutes read. Attorneys for Donald Trump and the Office of New York Attorney General Letitia James argued over the scope of the forthcoming trial in the state's civil suit against the former president before a New York judge Friday. Below are your comments. It is illegal to create a fake overvalue of your property in order to get a loan. Gasp! Exclamation mark. Surprise! Exclamation mark. Exclamation mark. Trump's entire empire is built on this model. Casino, airline, and his college all. I hope this trial moves on schedule. It will be nice to hear that NY City will get Trump out of their town's business. So Hunter Biden pays his taxes late and he should go to jail. Trump doesn't pay any taxes at all, brags about it, then demand his case to be dismissed because he didn't hurt anyone. The hypocrisy is mind-bleep. They deserve their day in court like everybody else. It would be nice if everyone gets their cases dismissed before a trial. Why do they want the charges dismissed if they are innocent? Dismissal will be unfair to the AG Letitia James. Justice must be served and Engoron knows it. Next news. Jack Smith adds war crimes prosecutor. His deputy from The Hague. To special counsel team. 3 minutes read. The special counsel's office is gearing up to put Donald Trump on trial in 2 criminal cases next year. Below are your comments. Normally if it's the DOJ versus. Here, however, the DOJ is obviously pulling out all the stops. Hurin, a prosecutor experienced in war crimes prosecution with the assumption that his knowledge could be tied to law Donthacon broke. Or, upon speculation, mine only. He might be tasked with investigating whether certain members of Congress are complicit in the SAM or other crimes against law. It sounds to me like these are all top-notch attorneys in experience and education, and money is not going to be a concern or element of their thinking. Trump's attorneys better be better than what is thought of them. I think they are going to find out why others refused the case. In The Hague, he oversaw investigations of foreign gov. I have heard it discussed that Trump will never see the inside of prison even if he is convicted on each and every crime he is charged with. Prisons are not equipped to deal with an ex-president and his Secret Service agents. It also has been debated if the country is ready to have an ex-president. Next news. President Joe Biden to join striking auto workers on picket line in Michigan. 6 minutes read. Former President Donald Trump, the leading Republican seeking to unseat Biden, is also courting auto Workers with a rally in Detroit. Below are your comments. Why would the union want Biden there when his green energy plan will cut union jobs in auto industry by 40%? Up to 40% of them may eventually be out of a job because of President Empty Suit and his rush to show VEVs down the nation's throat. His visiting the picket line, even if it actually happens, is a gesture that reeks of insincerity. Perhaps he should visit our southern border, and then tell us that it. This would be a huge mistake by President Joe Biden. He needs to be neutral and let the parties negotiate a settlement. Next news. Judge overseeing case to remove Trump from ballot agrees to order banning threats and intimidation. 3 minutes read. The Colorado judge overseeing the first significant lawsuit to bar former President Donald Trump from the state's 2024 presidential ballot on Friday issued a protective order prohibiting threats and intimidation in the case, saying the safety of those involved, including herself and her staff, was necessary as the groundbreaking litigation moves forward. I 100% understand everybody's concerns for the parties, the lawyers, and frankly myself and my staff. Based on what we've seen in other case. Below are your comments. And just like that, this case went, in my opinion, from least likely to cause Trump trouble to most likely. If he hasn't said something that can be brought against him with this ruling by the end of the week, I'll be very surprised. Trump's lawyer said there is no need for a protective order because threats and intimidation already are prohibited by law. But he should also know that will not stop Trump from doing it. The only way to do it is with the protective order, that way if Trump keeps doing it, that can arrest him and ch. Scott Gessler, a former Colorado Secretary of State representing Trump in the case, opposed it. He said a protective order was unnecessary because threats and intimidation already are prohibited by law. Well then, just quadruple the penalties. A protective order was unnecessary because threats and intimidation already are prohibited by law. We see how well that has worked so far. Next news. Trump legal news brief. Judge to rule on Letitia James's summary judgment request, or whether to dismiss Trump case altogether. 41 minutes read. A New York judge hears dueling arguments Friday on whether to find former President Donald Trump, his adult sons and his business liable for financial fraud, as well as whether to dismiss the case outright. Below are your comments. Executive privilege is made to protect sensitive information. It was never supposed to used as protection from crimes that our government employees committed. I'd like to know what the prosecutors know about Roger Stone's role in the insurrection. Trump gave him a federal pardon, but if he is found to have directed the Georgia plot, he could still face RICO charges at state level. Notice that all Trump's efforts are going into creating delays and technical objections. Has anyone heard one word of actual defense against any one of the 91 charges? Instead, He seems intent on tacitly confessing to criminal intent on all counts. An innocent man does not act like this. It was an amazingly large and complex conspiracy to overturn the fair and secure 2020 election to install Trump as a non-elected dictator. Back in the 1960s, when I was a teen, it would have been unimaginable that the leader of this conspiracy to destroy our democracy would be still the Republican F. If you notice, none of Trump's accomplices ever argue that they didn't do the crime. They always argue that they're somehow immune from prosecution. Next news. Trump notches another delegate selection rule win in Massachusetts. 4 minutes read. The state Republican Party on Thursday voted to keep a winner-take-all threshold likely to benefit Trump. Below are your comments. Trump claimed the election was rigged because Republicans tried to rig it. And still, it was not enough. So he's starting earlier. Massachusetts Republicans just handed Donald Trump another win in his quest to tilt state delegates' election rules in his favor. The collapse of the conservative cause isn't from free, open and intelligent discussion. It's from Byzantine rule changes, paid speech and false advertising that try to obscure not only the truth but intelligence itself. That's what happens in a democratic republic when bribery rules one whole part. Next news. The UAW strike and electric cars. Does Trump have a new wedge issue? 4 minutes read. Former President Donald Trump will give a speech to auto workers in Detroit next Wednesday, and he is expected to attack President Biden's policies promoting a transition to electric cars. Below are your comments. Even Trump can't stop this train. New jobs will be more technical, and if auto workers are willing to be hybrid electrics in the U.S. market since 2000. Electric only perhaps 10 years. From 2016 to 2020, Trump had ample opportunity to help union workers get more pay for assembling electric cars. Republicans controlled Congress. They were hostile to anything that threatened big oil. I cannot say that I understand your point, as that does not impact me cause I am not from California. However, it is just another way for politicians to take your right away by limiting your choices. We have a relatively small number of EVs now. If we had twice as many, you could never get them charged. Even in DC I've seen lines of Teslas waiting to charge at Sheetz. The infrastructure is not there yet, and the grid can't service the charging ports if they were built. EVs will never replace ICE vehicles 100% unless 100% of the households can be equipped with a battery charger. Hybrids yes, EVs no. Next news. Request for gag order on Trump raises free speech dilemma. 8 minutes read. Washington. The request by prosecutors that a judge impose a gag order on former President Donald Trump in the federal election subversion case presents a thorny conflict between the scope of his First Amendment writes and fears that he could, intentionally or not, spur his supporters to violence. There is little precedent for how the judge overseeing the case, Tanya Chutkan, should think about outweigh strong constitutional protections for political speech against ensuring the function. Below are your comments. Let him work with free speech from jail or restrict what he say out of jail. It then becomes his choice, but give him ONL. As a political candidate, private citizen, Trump can campaign, post on Truth Social, give interviews. He is free to present his platform and opinions. What his First Amendment right doesn't cover is inciting violence by naming court officials in an EF-4 to intimidate or influence. The problem plugging exceptions to free speech that government can suppress into your favorite search engine ISN. That. I don't think there's a dilemma at all. Gag orders are not unusual. And not all speech is protected, especially speech that incites violence. Trump is a criminal defendant out on bail in 4 different jurisdictions. As such, he doesn't enjoy all the rights and privileges of law-abiding citizens. And he can certainly run for office without threatening witnesses, potential jurors or people working on the case. Next news. Biden to visit Michigan to support auto strike, a day before Trump. 4 minutes read. Washington, Toledo, Ohio. Reuters, U.S. President Joe Biden will travel to Michigan on Tuesday to show support for the United Auto Workers' strike against Detroit automakers, putting him in the center of the dispute that has pitted his labor allies against major manufacturers. Biden, a Democrat, sees himself as a pro-union president, and his visit to the state, a day before President Donald Trump is scheduled to be there, will underscore his support for union workers' right to take action. Below are your comments. The matter is between the union, the company and the workers. Any gov interference in the process should be met with 3 fists, 1 from each participant. How about the southern border? Biden is too busy selling out the USA to care about American workers, union or not. Next news. Joe Biden to join picket line with striking auto workers in Michigan. 3 minutes read. President Joe Biden is set to join the UAW picket line in Michigan one day before former President Donald Trump visits the Detroit area. Below are your comments. Forget about lawyers. Most of today's politicians, regardless of party affiliation, are the new ambulance chasers. They are even worse than shady used car salesmen. They are so fake, their actions are almost predictable. American Rescue Plan saved many union pensions. Not a large percent of the American workforce. I keep hearing a lot of references to profits. Where is the calculation and amount of the profit they are referring to? Government has nothing to do with a private corporation strike. Sorry, but I think union workers and gov. workers are overpaid. I've worked for both in my life and I've seen it. Please subscribe to my channel. And if you like it, please thumbs up.